What did you witness or overhear as a child that still haunts you today as an adult? My parents have a story each that they tell from time to time regarding their childhood. My mother was playing outside one day when she looked up and saw what she thought were fireworks. She thought they were pretty, but then she noticed other adults coming outside and crying or yelling. Turned out a plane had blown up just above her hometown. The kids were ordered inside, and apparently all the adults were asked by the authorities to go up on their roof and look for debris. My grandfather found not just plane pieces but body parts on his roof, which apparently my mother caught sight of as he was cleaning them up. My dad's story is much more straightforward. He walked into the garage one day to discover the family car running, despite all the garage doors and windows being shut. He turned the car off and then discovered that his father, my grandfather, was in the trunk, apparently intent on killing himself. My grandmother apparently came into the garage at that point and immediately ordered my dad out. However, they never talked about it afterwards and denied it ever happened, something which shook my dad pretty badly. For what it's worth, my grandfather did live a long life afterwards, and he seemed happy for as long as I knew him, which granted was several decades after this event took place. My mom's boyfriend at the time decided a good punishment for me at about 7 was to lock me out of the house in a super thin nightgown at about 10 p.m. in winter. Luckily, my grandparents lived across the yard, so my barefooted self walked through the snow to ask if I could stay with them. Obviously, my grandfather was outraged, so he went over there to knock some sense into the guy. I was dumb and went back to the house to see my mom standing between my grandfather and her boyfriend, holding a knife to her wrist and basically saying if my grandfather tried to do anything to him, she'd kill herself. That's just one of the many fun stories I have of that lovely man who's now my stepdad. I think I was about 6 or 7 years old and was going to the grocery store with my mom and grandma when we saw a really bad accident. A kid who hadn't been wearing a seatbelt flew out of the windshield and landed in front of my mom's car. My mom ripped off my shirt and ran to help stop the bleeding while they tried to get help. I don't remember if cell phones were a common thing at the time, but it felt like an eternity of screaming until an ambulance arrived. I don't actually know if the kid survived, but the way his body just landed like a bag of bricks is forever burned into my brain. My mom has been with her abusive boyfriend for about 10 years. He's not physically abusive anymore, but from ages 8 to 13, I watched him do so many things to my mom. I've watched the number of holes in the walls grow by the week. I've heard my mom scream my name, yelling at me to call the police. I've watched my mom try to burn the house down. I stopped her from doing so. She was drunk and high. But the one thing that still pops into my head is the night where she screamed my name. I came running out and I watched him pick my tiny mother up and throw her against a shelf in a microwave. The kind of shit you see in movies where they make it look so easy to just pick somebody up and throw them. I've moved on from my past, but that one memory really haunts me. When I was around 7 or 8, I was in a grocery store during an armed robbery. My family was at the checkout when 2 people came in and started yelling and shooting. They told everyone to lay down on the ground, and my mom laid on top of me, but I could see when they shot one of the grocery store employees just a few yards away from me. The robbers ran outside and were confronted by the police in the parking lot and arrested. I believe the man shot ended up dying in the store, but I'm not 100% sure of it. My parents acted like nothing happened and never talked to me about it. My mom picked me and my sister up from elementary school, and when we got home I ran upstairs to say hi to my dad, who was usually at his PC in their room. He wasn't there, so I ran into their bathroom and apparently found my dad with his wrist cut in a bathtub full of water. The only thing I could really remember about the day is the visual of blood spots on the wet white tile. I was about 6 at a party at my dad's secretary's house. He thought it'd be funny to throw me, fully clothed and unable to swim at the time, into the pool and laugh at me in front of everyone. I was so humiliated and embarrassed that my own father would use me as a prop to make his moron friends laugh. I later found out that he was fucking his secretary on the side and is the father of her daughters. When I was 5, my best friend's mom killed herself in the garage and took my best friend with her. My parents made me go to the open casket funeral and described to me in great detail how it happened and how they were found. For a long time afterwards, my parents would punish me by saying my best friend is coming to get me. Messed me up for years. My cousin's suicide. She was in the room with my sister, who was a few months old, and shot herself in front of me. I slammed the door so the other kids couldn't see it. My face blanked over and I went numb. I called 911 and they cleaned up my sister. I've posted this before, but anyway, I was probably 7 or 8 and playing in front of my upstairs bedroom window. I liked to watch the cars go by while I was playing, and there were these two streets that ran parallel to each other in front of my house. They were only separated by a creek. Then, a car pulled up across the street from my house. Inside, a male driver and a female passenger were arguing. Then, the man punches the woman right in the face over and over. I ran past my mom yelling, "A man is hitting a woman," and I ran outside heading for the stairs. I guess at 7 or 8 I was going to somehow save the woman. I get to the top of the stairs just as my mom catches up to me and the car peels out and drives away. I'm 49 now, so for at least 40 years I've thought about that poor woman. I hope she got away from that guy. When I was about 6, I saw this guy dragging a kid covered in blood over a hill. I ran inside my house, panicked, and my dad called the cops. Turned out the guy was mad that this kid beat up his son. Not sure what happened on the other side of the hill, but he got arrested. I consider 2003 to be one of the worst years of my entire life. My parents got divorced and nobody had told me until one day. I walked into my parents' bedroom and all my dad's clothes were gone. He worked nights, so we hardly ever saw him in general. I thought he died at first, but then my mom told me what happened. Fast forward a few months later, a couple days after Christmas, my only living grandmother has a heart attack and dies, and I was told it was because she was overly worried about my mom, my sister, and I. I was never the same after that. My mother never was either. She took out all of her grieving problems with alcohol and cigarettes. I made a vow to never allow myself to get like the way she did. It was very traumatizing. The aftermath of my little brother's attempting to slit his wrists after my mother's drunken hurls of verbal abuse finally broke him. She saw what she had done after re-entering his room with more verbal assaults to deliver and fortunately stopped him before he slit the other. My parents were debating on whether he should be taken to the emergency room for stitches. I'll never forget his whimpers of pain as they prodded at it. My dad, commenting on how he could see the fat layer, and both berating him while he panicked. The feel of his still warm blood on the carpet as I scrubbed it alone while they took him to the emergency room, waiting for the call to tell me that he had died, which fortunately never came. I was 17, he was 12. A lot of stuff my parents have caused and done has fucked me up, fucked us up, but this one gives me the most vivid, sickening flashbacks so far.